Okay.
Hi.
Hi. This talk
Is called
No, you go, please.
How to Lose Friends and Alienate People. We're not going to read slides to you. That's not what we do. But yes, if you're here, it's hopefully because you want to hear something about social aspects of software engineering, which is what we usually talk about. And before we move on, we should talk. We had a very confusing URL. We replaced it with this wonderful Alien Joy URL. You can go on, do back channel talk. If you have questions, you can put them there, discuss, take notes, whatever you want to do. Let's get started.
Okay. We'll start off with who are we? My name is Brian Fitzpatrick, and I go by Fitz.
My name is Ben Collins-Sussman. I go by Ben Collins-Sussman.
And we are former engineers and recovering managers, or leaders, as you might say. Sure. We haven't been doing this but for 4 or 5 years, maximum, I guess. So we're not experts in it. This is mostly entirely formed of our opinions, and we're perfectly fine if you want to disagree with them. But you're going to have to get your own talk somewhere else if you really want to share that.
But we've been working together for like 12, 13 years now. Various open source projects. At one point, I worked for him. Then we worked on Subversion together. And
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you can throw tomatoes if you wish.
We use Mercurial now. It's OK.
And then after doing Subversion, we went to Google at the same time. And we started the Chicago engineering office. And now we sort of have evolved into management, not necessarily intentionally, but it's been on our mind a lot. Like, all right, well, how did we become managers? Is that good or bad? Is that OK? And we want to talk about some of the things we've discovered, I guess, in the process of becoming leaders. So
who are you? If I can have a quick show of hands, who in here manages people? OK.
Oh, wow.
Wow. This is going to be like a support group, isn't it? Hello, my name is Fitz. Hi, Fitz. How many people in here are tech leads or technical leadership roles? All right. How many people here thought this was a different talk? No?
All right.
So we're going to sort of take a couple different angles at this. But first thing we want to do is sort of, if we want to attack this, we want to sort of define what the problem is. And as we see it, that oftentimes leadership isn't intentional. Some people don't really want to get into it. But no matter what happens, there's always going to be someone sort of leading the way.
Right. I mean, if you take a bunch of engineers and you put them on a project, even if no one is assigned to be the leader, what you will find is after a while, there's sort of some self-organization that happens, right? And somebody starts becoming the person with the big picture, the person who becomes sort of the main point of contact, right? Starts maybe inadvertently organizing people, dividing up tasks, right? I mean, even if they don't have official authority, they sort of fall into that role, and people give them that authority, right? Because it has to be done. It doesn't scale otherwise.
Right, they start resolving conflicts and driving things toward consensus. But they sort of step into the role of the big picture person, because every project really needs someone to do that.
And I guess I've been thinking about this because I see it happen to a lot of people. I know it happened to me when we were working on the Subversion project for 5 years. It started out with just a few of us in a closet, writing code. And by the end of it, I was an IRC all day long, effectively managing internet volunteers who were working on the code. I wasn't writing much code myself anymore. I was just organizing people, and no one had, they're not my reports, right? But I was leading them anyway. And I call this the accidental manager. I guess maybe that's the best way to put it. And has anyone had that experience here, like become accidental managers? Sort of, yeah, right? I mean, you sort of like, how did I get here? What happened? And we're here to say it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. It's actually OK.
Right. But first we want to talk semantics, OK? And I'm not talking about the semantic web here. But I have an issue with the word manager, OK? And to sort of do the Will Smith thing, manager is old and busted, and leader is the new hotness, OK? So old and busted, new hotness, right? Manager really is a 4-letter word, OK?
Well, why is it a loaded term?
Well, it evolved out of the Industrial Revolution, right? You didn't have managers, 300-400 years ago, or project managers, or people looking to maximize their resources. Management came about the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line, right? If you're going to have somebody in a line stuffing meat into a can, you need somebody to sort of manage people stuffing meat into a can. But this works, it's very effective, this sort of carrot and stick routine, when you have people doing something by rote, right?
Right, you want to maximize efficiency by waving carrots and sticks.
And you want people to be compliant and listen, OK? So this is, and some of the stuff we're going to talk about here comes a lot from Dan Pink. If you haven't seen his TED Talk, we highly recommend it. We'll talk a little more about that towards the end.
Great stuff.
So this sort of traditional management mechanism works really well when you're managing people like this. okay? It's really great if you have nothing that requires any sort of thought, but it's a colossal failure if you're managing something that is complex or requires any sort of creativity.
Like software engineering.
Like software engineering, exactly. And so as a result, this creates conflict.
It's also a reason why managers are hated, right? I mean, there's this, if in engineering, just the word manager, oh, do you have a manager? It's almost like the word itself implies conflict or tension, right? And so, I mean, there's a lot of reason for that, right? There's a reason Dilbert has this stereotype pointy hair. Actually,
you can do that pretty easily.
I can almost make my hair pointy if I pull it out. Right, I mean, let's talk about that Dilbert manager stereotype, right? They have no technical ability, they're insecure, they get no respect because of that from their reports. They don't respect the reports back. They ignore any past accomplishments of their reports. They're hired like zookeepers to sort of cage the people, like, you don't trust them.
Well, and a lot of them are concerned with their own self-promotion and survival as opposed to removing obstacles for their team, which is really what a manager should be doing. But this, for all these reasons, are why that most engineers don't want to be managers, right? I mean, I sort of became a manager. I mean, my thought of managers was always management according to the Peter principle, right? That's the principle that you always get promoted one level beyond your capabilities.
Well,
okay?
give an example of that. Because I actually discovered a lot of people have never heard of Peter principle. Maybe
like
we're just old.
An example of that?
Well, I mean, the classic example is you have like a software engineer who's an amazing programmer, and they keep getting promoted because they're an amazing programmer. But then the way most businesses are set up, management is higher than software engineering. So you get to the top of the programming chain, and if you want to get promoted, then you have to become a manager, right? And suddenly now you have the world's worst manager, and you've lost the world's best coder.
Right.
And that's the classic scenario
it's a
that
double
we see
failure.
happen over and over, right?
But the general thing is most engineers don't consider management to be real work. You feel less productive. When I first moved from engineer into tech lead and then eventually managing people, I felt like I did nothing. I came home the other day, I'm like, what did I do all day? I talked to people and I sent email. I'm a human router, right? It was just like, it's awful. I mean,
it's hard to measure, right?
It's almost impossible to measure other than your general sense of malaise.
Or perhaps what I've discovered is maybe it's something you can measure on a longer time scale, right? If you're an engineer, you can sit down at the end of the week, all right, I wrote this much code and these features and solved 15 bugs, right? When you're a manager, it's like, well, over the quarter, our team achieved this, and I think it's partially my fault. Right? So it's harder.
Well, let's talk about what an engineering leader is, okay? I want to really switch more to the general leader thing, but a leader is not a general in this case. You're not talking about Patton. It's not somebody who barks orders at people. It's not someone whose team is there to serve them. A real leader is someone who is there to serve. Right? It's someone who serves the team, okay? Your role as a leader is really more than anything else to remove obstacles for your team, to grease the wheels, to give advice and guidance when it's asked for, to help people with their careers as well. But it's not about this just barking orders. There's got to be an element of trust there.
Absolutely. And the other thing you need to think about as a manager is you're responsible for two things, both the technical and the social part of the team, right? And what a lot of places, I'll see an engineer promoted to management accidentally, they're only still focused on the technical side, and they sort of ignore the social issues. And they're actually important. If you ignore the social problems, you will have morale problems, the team will fall apart, people will be fighting. I mean, you don't think it's possible, but then you sort of start managing people, and you notice it happens, and a lot of people put blinders on, right? Likewise, you don't want a manager who's purely social either, right? A manager should have some technical skill, should be able to engage the team, right?
And understand what they're doing, but be smart enough to get their nose out of it.
So you need a mix of both. You need to really think about both things all the time.
Right. So to touch on the group therapy aspect of this, leadership is not a waste of time. It's a very important role, and it's a way of getting more done that you could do by yourself. So it's a way of scaling yourself, right?
I remember one of my first managers, I said, he had just gone into management, right? And I said, you're not writing code anymore. How do you feel about that? And he's like, well, I realize now by managing you guys, like way more code is being written than if I were just jumping in and coding with you. Yeah. Like that's the impact I have. So you can actually, it's hard to quantify, but it's real, right?
Right. So that sort of sets the stage for what we talk about. And the best way, I think, to sort of explain what we're talking about here, what makes a good leader, again, according to our opinions, and we have very little experience here, so you shouldn't listen to us, is to talk about the negative side, right? The anti-patterns.
We'll start with anti-patterns.
Okay, we'll start with anti-patterns. Number one.
Hooray. Be everybody's friend. This is tricky, right? Especially if you manage a friend.
Well, especially if you're in a team and you're suddenly managing the team or leading the team.
To suddenly switch from peer to manager. Sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not, but it's actually possible to lead a team with a soft touch. Like I always say, the best kind of leadership is leadership that you can't really see it's happening, but it's not obvious, right? And that's fine. I think that works, and it's not about becoming everybody's best friend, but it's not about being distant either. One of the best pieces of advice I've heard is like, eat lunch with your team, right? I mean, don't sit in your corner office with the door closed. You need to be hearing what are they talking about? What are they struggling with every day? Like, you know, and that's not the same as being their friend, but it is being involved. You can. Right?
The point is, you can communicate and be social with your team without necessarily being their friend. If you're everyone's friend, it really destroys the ability to sort of, you know, sometimes you have to sort of be the stick and not the carrot in some cases.
Or deliver bad news.
Or deliver bad news, or just sort of push someone in a general direction. So the next sort of thing is the parent-child relationship, right? Okay. People will behave the way that you treat them, okay? Now, so if you put a bunch of bars up on the windows and lock all the doors, everyone's going to behave like a bunch of caged animals. If you treat people like children, they're going to behave like children, okay? There's a conference that we put on in Chicago, and I got the conference facility all set up, and I went over to talk to the guy, and he showed me around. He said, here's the keys. I'll see you.
So the whole building.
I'll see you in 3 days. Yeah, he's like, this is where this is, and that sort of thing. And it was an incredible amount of responsibility he put on me, and I was very appreciative of that, but I knew that I was the one who had to take care of the place and make sure nothing really bad happened, that sort of thing.
Or about, one of the things I like about working at Google, the way our IT department works, it's set up as a service to help us rather than to cage us, like most IT departments, you know, treat you like naughty children, and how can we stop you from doing the bad things, right? And we're going to restrict you in every corner. And Google's IT department is, well, no, we think you're a grown-up, and if you need something, come and ask and we'll give it to you, right? Otherwise, we trust you to behave. And I think that's a...
And there's some controversial parts. There's some controversial ideas in here, too. Like, you may have heard of Netflix has no vacation. Their vacation policy is you have no fixed number of vacation days. You take it when you need it, right? And I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really, I'd love to see how that works.
Peer pressure?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, but you're not treating people like children there. It's an extreme, but it's something interesting to contemplate.
More anti-patterns. Micromanaging, I don't think there's a lot to say here, right? This is the ultimate sign.
Now, what I want you to say here is about distrust.
That word, right?
Right, the word right there.
Right, so it's about distrust, right? This is the classic Dilbert situation. And, you know, honestly, if you start micromanaging people, again, they get used to it, right? They start behaving like children, like they stop doing work unless you poke them every day. Are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Well, and it can be tempting if you're very capable, if you're a very technical person that's moved into this role. It can be very tempting sometimes because you possibly understand more than someone who's just starting or someone who's a little more junior. And the temptation in some cases is to sort of give them A, B, C, D type directions.
Instead of letting them figure it out.
Exactly, exactly. But that sort of leads us into the next thing. Sometimes micromanagement is necessary if you follow the next anti-pattern, which is hiring a bunch of pushovers. You wind up basically with a team that can't move on its own, and they require on you to sort of make every move. And you need a team that's going to power itself, and that's not going to wait for commands. And so my general rule of thumb has always been, since I first started managing about 12, 13 years ago, but then quit because I had this horrible experience, which is why I'm here today. But I hire people smarter than me, which isn't too hard for me. But you know, you get people who are just going to get things done, who are going to make things happen, who you don't have to worry about them not understanding what's going on. At the time, I worked with another guy who he actually embodied this anti-pattern. I hired all these people that were smarter than me, and they went off and did amazing things. And he hired a bunch of people that he could push and poke around. And he loved it because he had this team of flunkies that he could just push and poke around.
Great power trip, right?
Yeah, and as his team got bigger, he started working longer and longer and longer hours. And he would just sort of be...
Doesn't scale.
It doesn't scale, right? And he was sort of miserable and eventually wound up leaving. But
well, I think related to this is the next pattern, which is to compromise when you hire. A lot of companies will see where, oh gosh, we're short-handed on this team. We need 2 people, so let's interview 20 and we'll just hire the best 2 no matter what.
Bad idea.
Very bad idea.
Yeah, because performance and your quality is going to go way down, and if you have really good people on the team, they're going to go way away from you.
Yep.
And they're just basically going to leave. So that ties a lot in again to the next anti-pattern, which is to ignore low performers.
Holy cow. Has anyone ever worked with a low performer that nobody did anything about? right? There's nothing more, yeah, exactly, wow, there's a lot of you. There's nothing more aggravating, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this person is dragging down our whole team, and I can't say anything, and why isn't the manager saying anything to this person or doing anything about it? I mean, like you said, it will cause the best people on the team to leave and find another team or another job.
Well, and this is probably the hardest thing to do as a leader of a team, is to work with low performers. I think there's a couple reasons for it. The main reason that I've seen is you wait too long. You sort of like, if I don't look over there, it'll get better, right? It's going to get better.
Hope.
Hope, yeah. Hope, yeah. Code powered by hope. If it's just going to get better. And what happens when you do that is you wait until it's too late, and you eventually reach a point where it's hopeless. And the only thing you can see is, how do I get rid of this person? Okay? So if you sort of...
And then that's the first conversation you have
right.
with that person. By the time you've already decided it's doomed, how do you even rehabilitate or give them a chance to get better? I mean,
well, you've made this mental sort of step in your head where you can't think about that. So if you step in early, you can actually help to manage them up or out, as opposed to just like, how do I get rid of this person? Okay, it's not just going to get better. There just doesn't happen.
I think the next point, sort of a generalization, is which we talked about earlier. Is just there are human problems on your team. Not every problem in software development is about writing code or technical problems, right? Sometimes people don't get along.
People problems are much harder than code problems.
They are much harder.
I've yet to find a bug that's as hard as a people problem.
Well, because it's fuzzy. People are fuzzy and gray, and computers are not
Compilers
that way.
are so much more consistent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I guess, well, this is a sort of a scary story, but one of the things I see missing sometimes, and if you have like a manager who's all technical, not interested in the social aspects at all, the thing that often is lacking is just simple empathy, right? That's sometimes all you need just to keep the social wheels greased. I had a friend who was working at a company. He had his first kid, got a couple weeks off of paternity leave, came back, was still very sleep deprived, discombobulated, and he was only working with one other person in his office, just the two of them. And he said, I'm going to be working from home and doing IRC and chatting, and his manager found out and said, no, you cannot work part-time from home at all. And no, you have to be in the office. And why not? And well, basically he said, look, you have to be in the office. It's more important. And what was the phrase he said?
He said, people have kids all the time.
Get over it.
Get over it.
Yeah. I was like, what?
I mean,
that's amazing.
So I can see the point of wanting someone to come into the office and work, but that's just the wrong motivational thing to say.
Not understanding.
Yeah.
So
it's the rage button.
The rage.
But you have to pay attention to happiness levels, right? You have to pay attention to the happiness levels of your team. It sounds all like fluffy and crazy, but you really have to understand to be able to have a productive team and be a good leader. I think understand. Are people happy with the product? Are they happy with where they're going, with how much they're working, with the company? I mean, there's a lot of different things you sort of have to be sensitive to.
What they call it, EQ?
EQ, right? Yeah, emotional quality, emotional quotient, something like that. Yeah, something completely unmeasurable and fuzzy that engineers love.
Let's talk about good things you can do, which I guess we've sort of been doing implicitly.
This is the boring part. You can check your email.
Honesty is sort of one of the biggest foundations for everything, right? If you're stuck, if you don't know what to do, go ahead and say so, right? Nobody expects you to be perfect or to have all the answers, right? Well, actually, you should talk about the compliment sandwich. This is the
compliment sandwich.
Dishonest way.
How many people have heard of the compliment sandwich? Okay.
That's my
all right. So for the rest of you guys, the compliment sandwich is this traditional management technique for delivering harsh feedback. You come into the room and you say, Ben, you've done a really good job. You've been a great team member and all. Your code is really, really low quality, but I like your beard. Okay? And Ben walks out going, yeah, he likes my beard, and I'm a good guy.
Awesome. I love
okay?
my beard.
The compliment sandwich is a lie. Okay? It's like the cake. It's a lie. It's just a bad idea. And I personally think that it's better to be constructive, straightforward, and direct while still having that empathy for the person that you're giving that to. I like nothing better than to receive very constructive feedback if I've done something wrong. And I mean...
Right, but you have to be tactful when you do it, right?
Yeah.
Honestly does not mean compliments. I mean...
We have an example of this,
well, yeah,
right?
What's a good example of this? So...
well, we had a guy that we worked with years ago who was really technically strong, wanted to argue absolutely everything, okay? Everything was an argument, okay?
Great coder, though.
He's a great, solid coder, right? Okay, so the non-constructive is stop being a dick and fighting with everybody, okay?
Not the way to deliver
Where do you
the
think,
message. Right?
well, where do you think that's going to get you? You think they're
Right.
going to say, oh, wow, I was being a jerk. I should
no.
stop this,
Right.
right?
So what's the better? The better way. You do it. I like the way you
The
tell
better
it.
way is, and this was explained to me by one of my previous managers, is that you're in a station and a train's going to come by every 10 minutes all day long, okay? Now you need to pick which train you want to step in front of, okay?
You can't stand in front of all
You
of them.
can't step in front of every train because you're going to be flattened, okay? Every time you step in front of one of these trains, the engineer's got to slam on the brakes. Some of them might hit you, but they're going to be annoyed because you're throwing them off schedule.
I think it's a way of saying choose your battles.
It's a way of
right?
saying choose your battles, right? But
Right.
it sounds more fun when you're talking about trains, right? Everybody loves trains.
All right, let's talk about the next pattern.
But the other thing about the honesty that I want to leave this on is there's no such thing as a temporary lapse of integrity.
I like that.
That's something that was a piece of advice that I was, and all this stuff really, a lot of this advice is coming from advice that we've gotten from our mentors who taught us. But that was one of the most important things I think I learned. Is
Temporary lapse.
Temporary lapse of integrity. Is that means you have no integrity. So that's where I think that the honesty really comes in as an important.
Speaking of folks that we admire, there's a manager at Google who we love. And we always sort of refer to him as a Zen master, right? We think of him that way because we talk about he exudes calmness, right?
In
I love
utter
this.
chaos. We say someone could come running into his office and say, somebody's bombed 19 of our data centers, oh my God. And he'd just lean back and say, I wonder why they didn't do 20.
Yeah, right. That's,
Yeah.
Right. So you want to this is something that we strive for as well when we're having one-on-ones with people or in any kind of meeting, right? Is stay calm, stay focused. Ask the team, what they can do to measure the problem, how they can be more productive, what kind of solutions there are. When somebody asks you for direct advice, if you have an opinion, you should give it. If you don't have an opinion, you can sort of do the psychologist thing, right, and respond with more questions. Maybe help them Socratically.
I would argue you should respond with questions off the bat first,
Off the bat.
instead of because it's really tempting to solve. I mean, we're problem solvers by nature. Anyone who's an engineer, you're paid to solve problems, okay? My wife loves this when I come home and she's like, oh God, I had a terrible day. And I'm like, let me fix it for you, let me fix it for you. She's like, just listen. Please, don't fix it. I want you to hear me.
That's the Mars-Venus thing.
That's the Mars-Venus thing, yeah. But a lot of the time, they don't really want to hear your solution to this. They want to talk about it, and your solution might have nothing to do with the problem.
No, but you're a sounding board, and
Yeah,
that's okay.
right.
That's good. And if you can calm them down and just emotionally get them focused again, it's a huge value, right? You're greasing the wheels again.
And a part of this extends beyond your team, right? Ask your team how you can be more productive and then measure that, okay? Outside of the team, you need to build relationships across the company, and you're going to be that bridge to other teams and that sort of thing.
This next pattern we've talked about in other talks, lose the ego, and people sort of misinterpret what we mean by this. We don't mean, be a dead fish, have no confidence. It actually just means don't be egotistical, is what we really say. So
Right.
we have particular examples of losing ego, right? Actually trusting your team. They're down in the trenches every day doing stuff. It's okay. They know more than you. They should know more than you, right? If they tell you something is or isn't possible, listen because they know, right? And you're not down.
Well, when it comes to the details of their particular area, right?
Have some respect for their abilities, for the accomplishments that they've done so far, and for what they've learned and what they know, what they're able to tell you from being down in the trenches.
And the next one is something, appreciate inquiry, okay? You should always actually accept when someone gives you feedback or criticism, and try not to be territorial about things. Try and think big picture. Now, I think this is really important in the high-tech world when you're writing software. I learned the hard way that this isn't necessarily appreciated in other domains. I had a friend of mine and an electrician helping me rewire the basement of my house. And I was so excited about this because I'm learning all stuff about electrical. And I asked this electrician about 7,000 questions. And I'm thinking, well, I'm learning all this cool stuff. And he's thinking, this guy doesn't trust me at all. Right?
Yeah.
But in high tech, again, when you're working on software development, this is something that's really important to listen. If someone's questioning something you're doing, it's good to talk through it because they might actually have a good idea.
It's curious interest, right?
Right.
And that's just part of hacker culture is that when somebody asks you lots of questions, it's usually because they're just interested, not because they're questioning.
Right. But annoying the hell out of somebody leads great into the next thing, which is
apologizing.
to apologize.
It's so crazy that we have to put this slide up, right? But so many people are just afraid to apologize. I see this all the time where they messed up, they know they messed up, and the manager is usually the last person to apologize, right? And it's okay. It's really, again, it's about having some humility.
So it's about being a human, right? I mean, you certainly make mistakes, and especially if someone gives you some constructive feedback, you look at that like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Apologize.
But I know when my managers in the past have apologized, it just increases my respect for them, right? All the more.
Yeah. So back again, to sort of stress the humility part, this doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. This doesn't mean, it's not the same as being unconfident, right? You can still have self-confidence and have opinions. And this is a fine line. And this is a really hard thing, I think, for some people. Some people have no problem with it, you know? But
part of getting some respect from peers also, like we said before, is getting your hands dirty. Like, effectively, it's okay to go down in the trenches sometimes, or maybe you're curious, or maybe you want to learn, or maybe you want to help. And I think it's good to occasionally do that if you have the time and the bandwidth, right? Because it'll help you understand the problems that your team are dealing with more.
You get a lot of respect, and it shows that you're not just here to contribute advice. Right?
The next thing,
but that's if you have time. If you're like swamped out of your mind and doing way more than you can already do, obviously.
Right. But the next thing is actually hard for new managers. I know it took me a long time to figure this out, is that people don't delegate, right? The classic new manager is like, okay, I'm in charge of instead of in charge of one thing, I'm in charge of 10 things now, so I'm gonna try and do it all myself and ask people to help me. And I'm like, no. You still can only do one thing, which is to make sure the other 10 people are doing the 10 things that you delegated, right?
Well, and you see something, you see a task that one of your junior guys is gonna take 3 weeks to do, and you could do it in 3 days. And the temptation is overwhelming to do that thing for them, and that's when you need to stop, right? Deep breath. Back up a little bit. But that sort of leads into the next thing of delegating. If you get a team that's doing enough stuff, that
self-powered,
self-empowered, right? And you hired people that are smarter than you, right? Is look to replace yourself, okay?
Sounds crazy, but I know that's what sysadmins do, right? Try to replace themselves with shell scripts so they can play games at work.
If you can replace yourself with a shell script, that's great too. You can find something else to do, I'm sure. Anyone writes a management shell script, please email it to me. That'd be great.
But I think this is a metric of success in management, right? If you can take a team that is not performing well at all, lots of fighting, lots of confusion, and you can sort of push people in different ways, so they're still self-powered, but they become this well-oiled machine to the point where you can almost just step back and you barely need to touch that machine anymore. You're done, right? That is what they're paying you to do. That's what it means to be a leader.
Right.
And then you can move on to another team.
Right. And if you have these capable people, if you basically want to focus on what people can do and try and always give them a little more responsibility than what they can actually take on, without killing them, right? You don't want to drive these people into the ground, but you just want to give them the opportunity to grow into that. If they feel a little bit overwhelmed or push back and realize they can't do that, then that's okay. But you should always give them the chance, because if you cage somebody, they're never going to be able to show you what they can do, and you'll often be surprised. Your
successor usually comes from within the team.
Right.
It's a great thing.
So I want to talk briefly about making waves, okay? Know when to make waves, right? I was told that piece of advice, and because I was basically, well, I don't want to talk, not these kind of waves, I'm sorry. It's these kind of waves. I had someone who reported to me who was making my life complete hell, and I was sort of hoping it would go away. This ties into the sort of hoping things will get better, right? There are times when you're leading a team that every ounce of your soul is going to tell you, just be that calm center of the world. And
don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat. There's something crazy going on. You just mellow out and it'll be okay. And that's the time where you should be just like cannonball and jump right in and make some waves in that team. You should attack it head on, again, in a constructive manner, but it's one of those things that's just not going to wind up making itself better.
Or sometimes it's beyond your team. Sometimes it's things happening in teams adjacent to you or within the company. And if you ignore it, you're in trouble, right? So yeah, it's hard to break that inertia, the instinct to just curl up and just focus and stay safe.
Right. And another thing, we sort of touched on this one already, but you shield your team from distractions outside, right? Usually there's a lot of crazy things going on in the bureaucracy of the company or in the upper echelons, and you should, or politics, bureaucracy, that sort of thing, and basically allow your team, give them the luxury of focusing on what they want to get done.
This next idea is actually, I think it's more about language. It's a very specific language tip. The worst thing I've seen happen is, maybe your service falls over and it's one person's fault on the team. They messed up, right? Took down your whole service. The wrong thing to do is say, our service was down because of Joe, right? And you embarrass that person in front of the whole team, right? That is not the way to do it. What we sort of talk about is when somebody messes up, they know, right? And you have, and
the team knows.
The team knows, and you know, and the person knows, right? You don't need to publicly humiliate or shame somebody. That's a stick, right? That's Industrial Revolution stick mentality. What you do is you talk about it in private, in a one-on-one, and say, well, what happened, blah, 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 you know, what can we do to stop it in the future? So, I mean, when talking openly to your team or talking to the company about your team, you talk about, you know, we succeed and fail as a team, but particularly, you do public praise of an individual, but you privately criticize somebody, right? So, hey, our team succeeded, isn't that great? And super thanks to this person for helping out in this way, right? Or, oh, our service went down, we failed as a team, we'll get better at that. Right. And then you take that one person aside in private and talk about it, right? So it's just the way you handle it. There's a tactfulness that's important.
Right, and another thing you should sort of look to do as a manager is to build consensus, right? You need to be that sort of catalyst that people can, to help make things happen, right? You need to know when to get your team unstuck, okay? Or when to take a risk, but also you should be there to take responsibility for the failures if you're sort of pushing things along.
Being a teacher or a mentor. This helps if you're older, I guess, or you have some more experience. But especially when you've got new people on the team, right? Either assign them a mentor or try to mentor them yourselves. Letting them, we've talked about this a few times already, but letting them make mistakes, not jumping in and doing it for them, letting them goof up and learn.
Right, it's the whole failure is an option thing, right? Failure is okay as long as you're not failing at the same thing over and over and over again.
You should tell your anecdote.
Right, there's a story about the senior executive that made a big business mistake and lost his company $10 million. And he comes in the next morning, he's all depressed because he's going to lose his job. And the secretary calls him, the CEO wants to see you in his office. He goes into the office. He's like, I suppose you'd like my resignation. Here it is. He says, resignation? Why would I want your resignation? I just spent $10 million training you, right? So that's a bit of a severe example of a failure or a mistake. But
letting people iterate and fail is important.
But I guarantee you, you'll never make that mistake again. Yeah. Okay? And so just to move on here, this is getting a little bit long here, but set clear goals. Your team needs to agree on the plans, and you really, I think a mission statement is one of those corporate double-speak things that people freak out about. It's really important. If you sit down and try and come up with like a quick sentence to convey what you're doing, it's going to really cause you to come up with a moment of clarity in your team, and you'll probably find out you don't all agree on where you're going.
It's surprising, actually. I mean, if you took a survey of your teams and said, what is the mission of this thing we're working on? You're going to get different answers unless you've already sat down and written a mission statement together. And it sounds, like I said, it sounds hokey, but it makes a huge difference in getting focused, right? And we're not talking about hiring a business consultant and spending weeks to talk. I mean, just have, sit down over lunch or sit down for a couple hours and have this conversation. Because it's amazing when things, you're bombarded with distractions all the time, right? Other teams telling you we want this feature or that thing or we're going to do this. And if you have a written mission statement, it's very easy to know what is in your scope and what isn't. Right,
the Google Web Toolkit. I worked with the Google Web Toolkit team 4 years ago now to come up with their mission statement. And I was talking to Bruce Johnson, who, if you ever met him, he's a fantastic guy. I told him, I said, I really want to tell you, he said, he told me that how great that was for their team. He's like, I never realized how unfocused we were until we came up with that. I said, well, I really appreciate you being so supportive of me at the time to do this, because I know some of your team members didn't want to do it. He said, oh, I really thought it was a waste of time. He said, but I wanted to give you a try. He said, but it turned out to be one of the greatest things that it sort of helped them to focus and learn when to say no and when to say yes and that sort of thing.
And is this the last pattern, I think?
I hope so.
Yes, finally.
Are we done yet?
We've mentioned this before, right? About your job is not just technical health. It's the social health as well, right? Have a happiness meter. Ask yourself, meet with your reports once a month. Before you go into your meetings or one-on-ones with them, say, is this person happy? And then ask them. Say, are you happy? I mean, it's kind of a crazy question, but a lot of people are taken back with it. And they'll say, well, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. And here's why, and I've been afraid to tell you, right? I mean, it really matters.
One of the scariest questions I've ever been asked by a person that managed me is, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? And the first time I was asked this, I was just like, what kind of question is this? What am I supposed to say? But I thought about it a lot. And the next time they said, what do you need from me? I was ready.
But sometimes, I've seen managers who are very technical who take this to heart, but the way they deal with it is sort of a very super technical solution. They'll make a spreadsheet, and they'll track, here's all the people on the team, and here's all the tasks, and these tasks are fun, and these tasks are horrible, and I'm going to assign the tasks this way, and then the next week I'm going to rotate so everybody gets a chance to be miserable and happy, and everything's fair. And that's fine. If it works, that's great, right? But then at least he's still monitoring the happiness level, right?
So what Ben's saying is spread the misery around.
Spread the
right? But by doing this, you actually give everybody a chance to be seen by others outside of the team in a lot of the times.
And to grow.
That's also important, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, enough of the patterns.
Let's do our wrap-up, which is longer than the middle. No, I'm kidding.
No. So I'm going to actually tell you a story this is my mother-in-law's philosophy, okay? My wife is the last of 6 children. And her mother-in-law has this philosophy about kids, and I think it applies to engineers as well, okay? So engineers are like plants. Everyone needs something different. Some engineers need more water, some engineers need more sunlight, and some engineers need to be buried in bullshit, okay? Your job as their caretaker or leader is to know who needs what, okay? Applying the same amount of water, sunlight, and bullshit to everybody means that some people are going to get way too much of something they don't need, and some people are going to get way too little of something they don't need.
Now let's do the spreadsheet version.
Spreadsheet version.
This comes out of various management classes that we've seen, and you might have seen as well, right? Putting people on this matrix. Are they excited about what they're doing, or are they bored? Are they very good at directing themselves and knowing what to do next, or are they just kind of scatterbrained and you have to constantly tell them what to do? And what you really want is you want to get everybody into that sweet spot in the upper left corner. How do you get there, right? Look at each person individually. More water, more light. What do they need? If they are totally disorganized, do you need to give them some direction, right? Not all direction is micromanagement, right? Some people actually need micromanagement, as long as it's just for a little bit, right? Not if it's all the time. If they need it all the time, something's wrong. But bits of direction here and there, great. Get them self-supporting, right?
And you might have some people that aren't challenged enough or aren't really focused on what they're doing,
or they hate what they're doing,
right? And so they're going to need some inspiration, right? They're going to need some sort of. You're going to have to figure out some sort of way to motivate them, and we'll talk a little bit about.
Let's talk about motivation.
About motivation.
Right? This is the stuff from Dan Pink's talk.
Right. This is a great picture, by the way. It's a carrot on a stick, so that if the carrot doesn't work, you just beat with the stick, right? Okay. So that doesn't work in this case, right?
So how many people have heard of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations? It's kind of a trendy topic now, right? The idea is that these carrot and stick, work faster. That's extrinsic motivation, right? It's motivation coming artificially from the outside. And now the cool new thing in management, which I believe, and which science confirms, is that
science.
It
works.
Right. Is intrinsic motivations. In other words, getting people motivated internally, right? And it's not about waving money in front of them, right? It's getting them to actually care about what they're working on. And there's 3 big parts of this.
Well, but you can never get anyone to work as hard or care as much through extrinsic motivations, right? You need to sort of, and this is the whole Dan Pink thing, right?
So what are the 3 big intrinsic motivations? The first one is autonomy, right? In other words, trusting people to work the way that they work best, right? If that means working from home once in a while, if that means having some flexibility and who they're working with or how they're doing their work, that's fine. Let them get their work. They know how to work best, right? You can't shoehorn them.
Well, 20% time is an example of that, right? That we give 20% time to engineers at Google. A lot of the time, we always talk about what products came out of 20% time, but a lot of time, it's just a permission to go chase something down that's bugging you, right? If you have an idea in your head and you sit around and think this is this great idea, it's just going to rot there. And you're going to go on thinking, I have this great idea. If you took 4 or 5 hours, you might actually get to realize, well, it wasn't such a great idea, but it was interesting, and I learned this, this, and this. Now I can go back to everything else and focus more. And it just, you have that sort of freedom to pursue.
The next motivation is what we call mastery, giving people the opportunity to learn and grow, right? I mean, it's great to be an expert in something, and maybe some people view it as job security, but let me tell you, you get really bored after a while, right? And if you're not, and if your manager isn't giving you a chance to learn new things and get better at something, then you're going to be frustrated, right? And if you're really interested, if here's a chance to learn something new, you're going to get excited.
Well, how many people in this room participate in the hiring process wherever they work? Okay.
Yeah. Whoa.
Wow, that's great. There's an analogy that I like to use is that we're all out there looking for the sharpest knife in the drawer, right? We all want to hire the sharpest knife, okay? There's 2 things you can do once you get that knife in your hand, okay? You can go outside and you can grind it on the sidewalk until it's dull. And then you say, I have a dull knife. And you throw it away. And you go looking for another knife. And I have a sharp knife. And then you grind it down, right? And there's this sort of this is the process of burning people out and not giving them a chance to learn and grow. You want to focus on getting that sharp knife, but keeping it sharp. Give people opportunities to learn new technology, to learn new things. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be directly related to what you're doing. We're doing a thing in our Chicago office right now. We're having robot contests, right? We're building Mindstorm robots and pitting them against each other in various ways. Arguably, I don't think we're going to be shipping any robots anytime soon for our projects in Chicago. But it gives people a chance to get to know each other. They're learning new stuff.
Work together.
They're working together, et cetera.
And
it's just one example of many, right?
So the last intrinsic motivation is just giving people a sense of purpose, right? We've talked in other talks about letting people drive the bus, right? Not just one driver. Let them work on something they care about. Give them a sense of ownership or stake, right? That it isn't just something that's being handed down from the highest levels of management and they're just a cog in the machine. Let them actually have an opinion, have a voice, direct where it's going, right? Take turns with the direction.
Right, because if you follow all the other stuff and you hired really smart people who are really motivated, they're going to want to work on something really big like that. I interviewed a guy once, and I said, if you could do anything in the world, what do you want to do? And he sat there and he looked up and he thought for a second. He said, I just want to add value. And I was horrified by this. I'm like, really, that's all you can come up with? I give you any opportunity or anything you want to add value. Add value to what? I mean, are you an adding machine? So, reverse Polish engineer, right? So that sort of sums up the majority of the advice of being a manager and leading other people.
Autonomy, mastery, and purpose,
right?
Right. Thank you, Dan.
So we have a secret sort of extra session that we're not going to tell anybody else about outside of this room except for YouTube. And that's the managing your manager section, right? This is how to, it's about a couple of things, right?
Well, wait, how did we come up with this section, right? Someone actually told us when they heard sort of an intro version of this talk, they said, I walked away from your talk saying, all right, I'm a software engineer. I'm not managing people. What do I get out of this talk? What can I walk away with, right? What can I do as an engineer to help my manager help me? And we said, oh, that's an interesting take.
That's awfully
right?
meta.
Help me help you to help me. Right.
And this isn't about any sort of evil manipulation.
Right.
And that only really works if you have a really crappy manager, right? And we're not going to teach you about dealing with a crappy manager. Manipulation, you can figure that out on your own. This is about how to make yourself easier to manage, improve relations with your good leader, so to speak, here, and how you can help them lead you.
Right. So let's give just a few takeaways for engineers.
Those things pretty quickly. These are all going to be. You're going to say, "This is so obvious. I'm going to get up and leave now."
Right. First of all, act like a grown-up. Right. Don't expect to be micromanaged. Get your work done on time without someone poking you. Right. And what was your story?
I had a new engineer. Sorry, he was a really senior guy. I still work with him this day. And it was his first day.
Much smarter than us.
And yeah, exactly, much smarter than me. And he came in his first day. At the end of the day, he came to my office. It's like 4:45. He said, I got to head out now. I had an appointment that I set up like months ago for a doctor, and he's just going on, and I'm like, why are you telling me this? And I said, look, don't tell me these things. I said, you come to work when you come to work. You go home when you go home. As long as you work 70 or 80 hours a week, I don't care. And he looked at me. He said, wow, I'm going to have so much free time at my new job. But I sort of tried to give him this sort of like joke at the end there, but I mean, the purpose of the matter is that, look, I'm not here. I'm not going to judge your productivity by how many hours I sit your butt in that seat.
Right, but if you are, get your work done, and if you're not, people will notice, right? But don't expect to be nagged to get your work done.
Right.
The next thing you can do is this goes with the mastery, right? Pursue new things. Pursue responsibility. Don't just fall into your own little world and stick in a cave, and this is what I know, and I'm not going to do anything else, right? Show some forward growth. Show some interest in other things. Go to your manager and say, I want to work on something new, or I want to be responsible for this new thing.
Step out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So another thing is to allow mistakes, okay? Remember that failure is okay. Take calculated risks. If you screw up or something happens, write a postmortem, identify what went wrong, identify what you've learned from this, and move ahead. Again, the whole failure is okay thing is really important. As long as you're not failing at the same thing, and use it as a learning opportunity.
The other thing you can do as an engineer is to talk, right? Just let people know what you're thinking. Let your teammates know what you think. Let your manager know what you think. Nothing is more frustrating to me, at least as a manager, is when somebody goes, all right, got my task, go off in my cave, see you in a week. And it's like, well, are you frustrated? Or is it going okay for you? Is it not going okay? Like, what do you do? I don't want to just talk to you once a week.
Well, they just expect that you're omniscient. You're just going to figure it all out
Yeah,
somehow,
yeah.
right?
So share what's going on, right? You know, it helps if somebody's sitting next to you and you can turn around and say, I'm really frustrated right now, or this is great.
Or have a great idea for something, that type of thing. Pointing out obstacles is also very helpful.
Kind of ties in.
Yeah,
right?
it's sort of that constructive, it's almost criticism of the product in that case. You know, don't be shy, don't be afraid to point out that this is what's a problem that you see, because
your manager's not omniscient.
Right.
Show them the obstacles that need moving.
And this is something that's really important to me, is argue, okay? I don't want yes men working for me. Because I've probably got way too much going on for me to get all the details right. And someone want to ask me a question, and I'll interrogate them a bit, and I'll say, well, what about this? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, and they'll go off and do it. What I really wanted to do is have more of a dialogue and hear more of what they're thinking.
Right, but dialogue is the way you solve problems, not, you know, here's my idea, yes, sir. That doesn't solve
Right, I mean, I'm going to admit that I'm wrong. My mind is changeable. I'm going to change my mind. And, you know, if I deserve it, then criticize me, certainly.
Let's finish up. Is anybody
still awake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Blah, 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 blah. So, all right, let's talk about 3 concepts you can walk away with, right? Here's the 3 things to remember when you leave the room. First of all, being a manager is about serving people, not having them serve you. You serve them. Second thing, all the patterns and anti-patterns somehow trace back to mutual respect, right? You respect them, they respect you back, vice versa, right? And the third thing is think about what's motivating people, right? It's not carrots and sticks. It's whether they actually care about what they're working on. Are they growing? Are you giving them autonomy and trust to do what they need to do?
And with that, so stop being a manager and start being a leader.
That's it.
And with that, thank you guys for joining us today. Pull up the wave. Everybody's like, lunchtime, they're out of here. If you have a question, just step up to the mic.
No, I think they're hungry. Or we'll let the hungry people leave. If anybody has questions, we'll stick around.
Oh, wait, no, he's got a question.
Oh, great.
All right.
Hi. I got a question on the wave.
It is on the wave. We didn't see it.
I didn't see it.
Did you reload
Yeah,
it?
there are
Did
a
you
couple
reload
of questions you can check. So managers invest a lot of effort on sharpening the knives or keeping them sharp. And the problem is that if you're a good manager and you have all your knives are sharp, other managers start looking for your sharp. So what would you recommend for your sharp knife? So what would you recommend for improving the team, I don't know how to say in English, like fidelity or people.
Cohesiveness, you're trying to talk about retaining your people?
Wanting to stay in your sharp drawer and not someone else's.
So the question's about if you have a drawer full of sharp knives, how do you retain them without other people?
How do you keep other chefs out of your knife drawer?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I like the underlying assumptions there, right? There's a territorialness.
Yeah.
That it's a little. I mean, I know that's sort of the norm for corporate culture, is to have managers fighting with each other over people. I know that.
I think that the real solution to that is to sort of turn it around, is to focus on making your work environment and the culture of your team, and focusing on the product, no matter what you're working on, as being compelling and as interesting as possible for people. And you know, if someone decides they want to go somewhere else, or want to change a venue, or need to move somewhere or something, they're going to do that. And you know,
try to make it not your fault, though.
Yes, exactly. Try to make them leaving because they found some more attractive knife drawer, not because they hate yours.
Or they're bored with your project or something.
This analogy is just not going that
it's
far.
It's not really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hey, this is on the wave too. Do you guys do anything different for volunteer projects versus managing a team at a paid organization?
Do we do anything different for volunteer projects compared to a big organization? In my experience, it has not been very different. But then again, Google is not a typical company either, right? It's sort of run in a very open sourcey kind of way.
I think it can be harder. See, I think it's always harder in an environment where it's paid, and even at Google. And I would argue just because people who are volunteering are there because they want to all the time, and I feel like they're excited and happy because they're part of that team, because the interview processes would get you into the company, and they're just dumped into a team in a lot of cases. when you join a volunteer project,
They're
like,
intrinsically motivated already.
right. You join a volunteer project, you're not only intrinsically motivated, but you're typically, the culture sort of selects for you, right? So it takes a certain amount of, it's like a transmission. You sort of have to get up to speed and mesh gears before you're going to join that team where they're going to accept you. And so if there isn't that sort of gear meshing and people don't see it as more of a privilege to be on a team, then I think that's what makes it harder.
I see it as volunteers are intrinsically motivated, so they typically need more direction. Where when you're in a company, you're getting paid no matter what. I think people need more intrinsic motivation and less direction.
And
I guess that's how I would weight it.
Yeah.
Other questions? Come to the microphone,
please. Last question. It's not really clear for me what happens if one person in your team is your real friend, is a best friend for you. What do you do in that case?
What do you do in one point? Well, what do you do when the person sitting next to you on stage reports to you? What did we do? Well, I mean, in our case, it was...
We dodged a bullet.
Well,
and you don't want to lose
Ben
the relationship.
actually reported to me for a while because Chicago needed someone to sort of run the engineering office. And at first, I think we both thought it would be a little bit awkward, but I don't think it was, because it was easy in our case because Ben is very intrinsically motivated and doesn't need a lot of direction. If it had been the other way, I don't know how easy it would have been.
If it's like if your peer is not performing well and you're supposed to deliver news, honestly, I would get out of that situation, I guess. I would have gone, if I ever found myself in that situation, managing a friend who was not performing well, I would have asked for my manager to change the situation.
Sort of recuse yourself from management in that case.
Yeah.
That's probably would have been the best thing to do.
If the person's just an awesome performer, then you can just sort of turn a blind eye and it's not a problem.
Right, because you're running to keep up with them anyway.
Right.
One more question?
So your advice was don't ignore the human element in your team, which is very good advice. But sometimes your team members have personal issues outside of work between themselves. And there's this very thin line between trying to intervene in their personal lives and it's also affecting their work. So, and I know this is probably not an easy question to answer, but have you had any experiences where your teammates had personal issues between themselves outside of work that was affecting their work?
So the question is, have we had problems with teammates having interpersonal issues outside of work affecting work? How do you deal with that?
Well, I mean,
crossing a line.
It's very careful. It's a problem that has to be handled with care and with empathy, I think. But it's not like you get them both in a room. I'm going to lock you in this room, and you're not coming out until you're both wrote 25,000 lines of code or something, or work your issues out. I think the real answer there is that you can look to see if it's possible to easily and simply move someone to another team.
That's what I would try first.
That's the easy way out. But the fact of the matter is, I would probably sit down and have a very short and frank conversation with both of them and say, look, what I'm seeing here is some sort of issues working with so-and-so.
Which is impacting the rest of the whole team.
It seems to be impacting the team. Can you tell me why that might be? Okay? And this is a great sort of technique that I learned on delivering hard feedback is to sort of ask people questions. Why is it that you're having that there's an issue, that I perceive an issue with it? Why do you think I'm seeing that?
And what do you think we should do about it?
And and then sort of just keep asking questions. Don't sort of give your answer. And I would talk to both of them quite frankly about that.
And then compliment their beard.
And then compliment their beard, right.
It's interesting that this is I run my own company right now, so it's kind of like I'm deeply personally involved in figuring out the question. The answer to this question, but it's interesting that you spend a lot of time talking about team, but every company I've worked for in the past, at the end of the quarter, it's who's the employee of the month. And to me, that's the #1 destroyer of team, because wait a minute, I helped that guy a lot solving his problem, and he got the recognition, and I didn't. So one of the things that I've really thought about as I'm trying to build the culture of my company is there will be no individual awards. There will be team awards with one person designated as helping, with the team deciding how to distribute the reward. Because as soon as you have an employee of the month, it's all about me now.
Well, you're creating one winner and a whole bunch of losers every time.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So I think I like Google's solution to the problem, which is to have peer bonuses. Like if somebody, you run into somebody at Google who does something amazing, way beyond the call of what you expected from that person. Could be on your own team, could be some other team. You can actually nominate them for a peer bonus, and usually it will get approved. And then they it may not be announced to the whole company, but that person feels appreciated, feels like they went above, and maybe it's just private between the two of you, right, and the manager, and that's it. And I think it's pretty effective without getting into the whole superstar.
In summary, yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I was hoping that you had insight, but I like the peer
We have
award
no
thing.
insight at all, really. I think we're fresh out of insight. No, I mean insight on how to basically build culture, and that.
Yeah.
Well,
recognize-
how to reward without picking like you said who gets to be up on stage and who doesn't, who gets the recognition and who doesn't, right? Which is a very you miss the cutoff by 0.1% kind of thing or something stupid like that. Only one person can be valedictorian.
I think the way that I reward top performers that are working with me is basically with more opportunity. I focus really hard on what I can do.
Hold on, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm not talking about the top performers. I'm talking about the people that enable the top performers to be top performers.
Well, I think I recognize. Okay, so I also help them. I mean, it's again, anyone who's working towards the betterment of the team is a good performer, a good solid performer. Okay, so it's not about, there aren't any sort of necessarily extrinsic motivations, like you're going to get 2 carrots and you're going to get 3 carrots, right? That sort of thing. So we can chat more about that later.
We're actually out of time.
We are out of time.
We'll go in the hallway.
Okay.
If you want to keep chatting.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks.